goodness gracious. It's time for another episode of The Score. Oh my gosh, episode 23. 23? No, 26. 26. What am I thinking? It's 26. My gosh.
3 weeks ago.
You know what? It might as well be December. The days and weeks are just sliding by here in my little basement bunker. Anyway, this is The Score. Welcome to it. Minnesota Opera's podcast all about classical music, opera, pop culture as seen through the lens of three opera administrators of the global majority. My name is Rocky Jones. I am the EDI director here at Minnesota Opera. As always, I am joined by my two beautiful co-hosts. First, the Vice President of Impact, Mr. Lee Bynum. Hello.
Hello, is it Lee you're looking for? Trying out new catchphrases. At some point, one of these is going to work.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I won't quit my day job, don't worry.
I was not expecting that.
Well, if you're looking for laughter in the reaction, I guess it works. Depends on what you're going for.
There you go. There you go. You know, actually speaking, before I get into that, and my other co-host, of course, the lovely and talented Civic Engagement Manager, Miss Paige Reynolds. Hello.
Hey.
How's it going?
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. I was gonna say good, and I was like, let's not lie. The world's full of twists.
Let's keep it real.
Right
keep
now.
it real.
Let's keep it real.
That's the truth.
But thinking about taglines, though, I was going to say that I thought of one the other day. And I don't know, have you ever listened to that podcast? Yeah, dude. Probably not.
No.
Yeah, it's one of like the first gen podcasts. Like they've been going since like 2008. They basically take like studies, like weird, like, you know, studies that like corporation, like Betty Crocker says that 98% of people like to bake brownies more than cookies or whatever. And like make fun of it. Like these weird random factoids or whatever. And their tagline is America seen through the eyes of two American Americans. And so, and so I was thinking the other day, like opera and classical music seen through the eyes of three African American Americans.
Yes.
I don't know. But I have to think of one for my name, though. Is it Lee you're looking for? That was...
Yeah, I'm just like... I have to come up with something. Obviously my name is very easily punnable.
Turn the page.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's something to think about, right?
I'm not doing any sort of Rocky Road type situation. That's not happening. Well, I'm so glad that we can all have a laugh, because y'all, these past couple of weeks have been something else. This is the first time that we are recording together since the death of Amir Locke here in Minneapolis, the victim of a police-involved shooting. I'll just put it that way. After a no-knock, after the St. Paul police asked the Minneapolis police to serve a warrant in a murder investigation, the Minneapolis police requested a no-knock warrant, went into the apartment where Amir was sleeping, and 9 seconds later, he was shot and killed. And so, once again, our community is reckoning with another young man who has been taken down. Gosh, I don't even know how to sort of finish that sentence. In the prime of his life, 21 years old. And so it's just still sort of sitting here trying to process that, weeks later. I don't know. I don't know what really to say about it other than, sending love and light to the Locke family and all of the people who knew him and loved him, who
Absolutely
right now are deep in mourning. And standing in solidarity with all the people who are real angry. Because I know that I'm feeling a lot of anger.
Yeah.
As well as a lot of sadness.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's very much a feeling of like, just when is it enough? Like, how many times does it have to happen here publicly as well? Like, in like these public matters. Yeah, like how many times? I don't know.
And for the rest of us, how do we keep our energy up to continue fighting and organizing in the face of these frequently recurring events, right? Like, how do you just say to yourself, it's just as important, if not more important today, that I continue in this work without those feelings of fatigue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, what I try to do is allow myself to feel what I feel and allow myself to feel it for whatever period I'm feeling it, and then work to recharge so that I can continue, because I don't know that I have the option not to continue, right? I don't know when we'll be in a situation where Black and brown bodies aren't brutalized by the state. Like, I don't know when that moment will be. So yeah.
Yeah. And just in this time where it's like we actually all have to like watch it.
Yeah.
It's just so turning on the TV, scrolling through Twitter, there it is. George Floyd, Dante Wright, Sandra Bland, all of these stories now are just sort of being captured on cell phone video and out there for public consumption. And it's just so traumatizing. So just fatiguing. And, Lee, you and I were talking about this the other day, and it just sort of also makes me just sort of sit here and second guess, like, all right, we're doing this work, in this space at an opera company, and big part of why, I do that is because, I feel like I love the arts. I love being an artist. I feel like I'm good at it. But maybe I should be in government. Maybe I should be, in some sort of direct service organization. And, I struggle sometimes with feelings of not doing enough. Especially like in the wake of these incidents, which don't seem to be gone anywhere, like you said, Paige. So I struggle with that fatigue part of it too. Yeah. It's just so exhausting. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's hard to watch. I think especially like here, like where we are in Minneapolis, like it's hard to watch how short attention spans can feel sometimes. I think nationally and even within our field, as well. Like it's hard to not fall back into business as usual. And I contend with that feeling a lot. Like, yeah, like kind of sort of the hope, like, should I be doing something else? Like, it seems like there's some core functions of of what I do. I mean, just as a career, not even speaking just like in Minnesota Opera, just as a career, an arts administrator, as a theater maker, like it can be hard when you feel like those functions don't necessarily have a direct impact
Mhm.
on like the issues you care about the most, or what seems really urgent, or like really really pressing. And yeah, it can especially in moments like right now with the death of Amir Locke, you're, when it comes to national conversations, you're just like, did everyone forget, or do they not know that literally like police have not stopped killing people since the murder of George Floyd? Like, and it hasn't just been Amir Locke. I don't, it can be wild to watch how quickly our priorities can kind of shift back into the business as usual.
And what is business as usual, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mhm.
know, I, in these instances, I spend a lot of time. I find myself sort of pulled between this question of what do I need to do? How do I use my skills and my knowledge to make a different world before me to whatever extent I can participate in that, and then get pulled into kind of what what are the families going through, right? Like, where does this leave them? The legacies of these kinds of incidents really stay with people, right? And when I'm thinking about organizationally what we should do for society, and then try to sit that beside rather, where the families may be with some of this, it becomes really complicated, right? Because there's this need to honor and address professionally, and then, on the other end, families want to be able to grieve and mourn privately, and then want to be able to move on with the rest of their lives in some ways, right? And I've shared before, maybe on this podcast, but I shared with the two of you that when I was a kid, we had an instance not totally dissimilar to this happen in my family. December 20th, 1986, there was an incident in Howard Beach, New York, where a group of West Indian immigrants were attacked, not by the police, but by a group of white teens, and it was racially motivated. One of them, his name Michael Griffith, was killed in the process. One of the others, Cedric Sandifor, was my uncle, and he's since passed unrelatedly. But the sort of legacies of what happened at Howard Beach, and at the time I was a young kid, I was in first grade, like it was like on the news, they made a TV movie about it, and Joe Morton played my uncle. Like it was this huge thing that so marked my childhood, right? And
Mhm.
kind of frames events like this in a very specific way in my head, where we're both supposed to take action and then at the same time have to give people space to process, like privately giving people space to process what has happened, and how that will always be a factor, um, in our lives, right? So that's, sort of how stuff like this it just sits with me for like a very long time. Every time one of these things happen, every time I see a grieving mother or father on the news, every time I read a tweet, like I think about like how long something like this is going to sit with those people and shape and reshape so many of the perspectives they have about who they are, and how the world works, and how you're supposed to engage with it. And when the three of us were talking a little bit about this yesterday or the day before, I felt like I'm not always sure
Mhm.
about how organizations, especially organizations like ours that don't have a direct part in the process, right, are supposed to react to stuff like this, because there is this piece where we represent a whole community, right? And there is a conversation that we have a responsibility as an organization that exists in a civic space to have. And then on the other hand, there's a way that we are not structured or shaped or have done the work of hiring people who can address anything like this directly, right? And there is this piece of, for me, when we need to make a statement, under what circumstances that will read as hollow, right? And then the extent to which we need to pick up the fight in our own way, right? And sort of understanding that as an arts organization, our wickets are productions, right? Like world-class opera productions, literally says so on the website, right? Like, what does that mean in this context? How do we bring those values to bear on the stuff that we do and we do well, while at the same time using our largesse to amplify the work of organizations that actually do exist to take on this work, right? Direct service organizations, advocacy organizations, that kind of a thing. And it does feel sometimes like we're not doing enough, like we could never do enough. And then on the other hand, it also feels like it's okay to acknowledge this is the thing that we do, right? And what is the investment in making productions that reflect this? What does that look like, right? In terms of the casting and the programming and the shaping of creative teams, you know, what does that mean? And then how you do that as a person who in the moment is experiencing a personal amount of trauma around this, and recognizing how important this work is, but at the same time knowing this doesn't do anything to alleviate the pain that people are feeling in the moment.
Yeah, no, because it's it's an interesting conundrum, because personally, I would rather there be no statement at all than something that feels just sort of like we put this out here because
Amen.
we felt like we needed to say something.
Amen.
And sure, we'll sit here and we'll say Black Lives Matter, or stop Asian hate, or whatever the hashtag is, but our actions aren't actually going to back that up.
Yeah.
The dollars that we're spending are not actually going to go to organizations that are going to back up that statement. And it drives me a little bit crazy when I see that. And so, it is very important for me, especially as the EDI director of this particular company, that whenever we do say something, because I do believe in my heart of hearts that, we're more than an arts organization. We are a civic institution. We do have a responsibility as an organization that, takes public money, that, we are representing everyone, that everyone feels safe, within our walls, in our spaces, whether that's, coming to see a main stage opera or participating in an education program. We're coming to work, as an artist or a staff member. And so, I tend to think back to the shooting in Atlanta that happened, gosh, what is time? And sort of the statement that we put out around that. And for me, it was really thinking about, our industry and what really are we doing, to stop Asian hate? And what are some of the things that we've done to perpetuate it? And let's address those things head on. And then here are a whole bunch of links so you can give some money to some organizations, and hopefully just sort of using our audience and our platform to really affect some sort of positive change. But with all that said, it never seems like it's enough.
Yeah.
Right? It really doesn't, because I remember that morning that we got the news, everyone found out about that shooting. reaching out to the members of the API community that we have on staff and just hearing the pain in their voices. Like none of them obviously, had any personal ties to that particular tragedy, but just, in the same way that we're sitting here and we're processing this pain and they're and processing this grief, they were doing the same thing and just wanting so badly to somehow lessen that burden for them, in the same way that I want to lessen the burden that I'm carrying right now, that you all are carrying right now. And it's just, sometimes I wonder if it's our place to do that, if like we just do that by presenting works that are in alignment with our values. Do we put out a statement? Do we encourage charitable donations? Like and it's just
right. Because some of it is a conversation with our community, right? Like really getting a sense of what does the community,
what do they even want from us?
Exactly. What do they want, right? And I think we are slowly building out our capacity to be able to have those conversations consistently in real time and get in the right kinds of information. And at the same time, right? So I went to the Anonymous Lover for the 75 minutes the show was running, in the half an hour to get there and to get back between. I wasn't thinking about so many of the things going on in the world, right? And I was able to sort of give myself that space to just enjoy the music. And the show ends and you get in the lift and you're on your way back to Minneapolis and you are reminded of what's happening in the world, right? So on the one hand, I was certainly grateful for that time away as a person inclined towards music. Like music is a powerful way for me to express what I'm feeling in a moment, or not express what I'm feeling if that's what I want to do, right? And I wasn't laboring under the delusion that this piece, as wonderful as it was going to solve that, right? But it did give a little bit of space. There are other pieces that can give voice and space to other kinds of things. And I do think part of our responsibility right now is understanding how to find those pieces, identify them, program them, have conversations around them, but also we are the organization that we are, right? Like our orientation is not to solve poverty or police brutality, and we can't, right? So then how are we supporting those organizations that do in ways that are organic and fair and reflective of the fact that this is America? So part of how we have to show that support is with material resources, right? Like what are those conversations? And I hope that we can continue to have them openly and honestly here and continue to prioritize that this is a part of responding holistically to audiences, is knowing that this is a real conversation and knowing that we have a part to play, whatever we decide that part is.
Well, I think a possible part to play, I think, for the arts, or one that gives me, I think, a lot of hope and that feels useful, is when I think of artists as cultural keepers, as historians, as sometimes archivists, as reflecting the times, as as Nina Simone would say we ought to do. And to me, especially, when I think all of us have probably sat in a theater class at some point or English class and talked about the importance of narrative, and talked about the importance of who's speaking, who's telling a story. Is it from those who were in power at the time, or is it from those who were marginalized at the time? I think like the possibilities of the arts to do that, or to illuminate that, is really, I think that's really important. That's really important, especially again in this world where our attention spans change so quickly. The media goes a mile a minute. I think it means even more to have something that says, hey, this happened, or
Mhm.
to find ways to memorialize the movement, to what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, make monuments of these moments. I think that's important as well. Like, there's a reason why we talk so much about, or why it's such a big deal with like statues coming down of Confederate
Mhm.
Mhm.
figures, or
Mhm.
racist and
Mhm.
misogynist and all of that, because just like the public narrative is just so crucial. Like, it informs how we remember things, and that informs how we do things now and in the future. So I think, I don't know, that part about art makes me feel hopeful. I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh, I can do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I can tell a story
Yeah.
about what's going on right now. I can write a song. I can paint a painting. I can, okay, like that feels doable and useful. So yeah, I think I'm like, as artists, like what would an opera about now look like, that like speaks truth to what's going on now, and ideas like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That
thank you for saying
yeah.
because
Absolutely.
I tend to get bogged down, I feel like so often we sort of get this, especially like you think back to like, the 60s, and you've got, like Nina Simone and, you know, Marvin Gaye and Richie Havens, all these artists who, were sort of seen as prophets, who are able to sort of really encapsulate the moment and really say, um, just really paint a picture of so many of the injustices that were happening, and people really listened.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I feel like, especially since like the 80s, and arts funding going the way of the dodo in many cases, we've just been, as artists, been told to, like Laura Ingraham saying to LeBron, shut up and dribble, like just go
Mhm.
shut up and paint your little pictures, go shut up and do your little operas. And sometimes I do get caught up in that thinking, and I need to stop, because we do have an incredible amount of power.
Mhm.
And I think back to, I mean, this is why I do what I do. Sitting on a park bench when I was 13 and listening to an album and having it make me cry, and, thinking like, oh my God, I want to do that for the rest of my life. There's just so much power, um, still, no matter what, and just human, just creation and connection. Um, I needed that. Thank you,
Yeah.
You're
Paige.
No,
Thank you.
a-
welcome.
Thank you.
absolutely. And I'm reminded of two songs as you were talking, Rocky, about the 60s. I'm thinking of two songs from the 30s, Strange Fruit and
Hmm.
Suppertime,
Hmm.
both
Yeah.
of which really affected people in terms of being able to capture what lynching was like at a very, very human level, right? And there are clearly artists writing and producing and performing today that are making those efforts to memorialize what these moments are. And, perhaps in a moment of less emotional haze, some
Hmm.
of that will resonate with me differently. But I'm also really grateful for that intervention page, because I do think that's part of how we change people's minds, and we do that through art, right?
Yeah. Yeah. When I thinking about Nina again, oh gosh. Like, when I think, like, I just remember the first time I heard her sing like Mississippi Goddamn, I was
Mhm.
like, like, they let her sing this? Oh my gosh.
This is a show tune.
Right. She's just like, I'm just gonna sing this little ditty. Girl, like, but also like, because hearing it, I absolutely understood where she was at the moment, and the
Hmm.
type of anger, the
Hmm.
type of rage, like, of that moment. Like, I mean, I'm already a history nerd anyway, but I think about like who's creating that now, like what's going to
Yeah.
tell future
Yeah.
generations what we were going through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, Absolutely, because a lot of a lot of what you can hear right now is just representing so many other parts of the culture, which are absolutely valid to
Mhm.
capture, right? But what is that moment? And if you think about some of the live recordings of Mississippi Goddam, when she starts, the audience is applauding. They hear that opening vamp, which sounds like
Mm.
Kurt Vile, and they're thinking this is going to be a cute little bouncy something. And then by
Mm.
the time she gets halfway through, you can hear a pin drop, right? Like the
Yes.
audience is really listening and really processing in a different way, right? And what are those moments happening right now, not just on, stages like the Ordway, but where is this happening, artistically right now? And what can we do at a company like ours to reemphasize that this is an important way that we are memorializing the moment, that we are speaking to the zeitgeist, that we are responding to the trauma and the violence that's happening around us? Because it's not just these are songs, right? These are responses, these are engagements with the moment.
Well, I'm curious. I want to, actually, I want to hear from our community.
Yeah. Oh,
I
I
yeah.
do.
want to hear from all of you out there. We've got our email, the score at eminopera.org. What do you all want?
Yeah, hop on that
from
keyboard. I want to
from an
know.
organization like us, like ours. We want to speak to this moment.
Yeah.
Um, and so what are some suggestions? What are some thoughts? What are some concerns? Should we just shut the F up?
Like, just like
Like-
sing your little song. Sing your little song.
but I'm serious. I'm serious. I do want to engage with the folks out there, because we're just living through not just the extrajudicial killings of Black folks, but COVID-19, and just the world is just I don't want to say exploding, but it just feels like there is just so much wild S word happening each and every day. And, just being, a thinking, sentient human being on the planet, it's hard to, just not vacillate between just feeling crazy and angry and sad. And to, especially like as artists, to want to respond to that in some way. But as members of the community, what do you all think of all this? What do you all want, need? Let us know. Score at
Absolutely.
mnonfight.org. And hopefully, we'll get some emails and maybe we can read them on the air.
And if I may, there are two pieces that are very close to my heart, and from friends of the show that I would love to speak their names on
Go
air in
for it.
case people want to
Mhm.
check them out. The first one is written by our dear friend in Kiru Okoye. It's called Invitation to a Die-In.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show, yes, ma'am. And it's specifically in response to the recent murders of unarmed Black men at the hands of police or vigilantes. It was written for Damien, also a friend of the show. And it's been performed by other folks since then. And there are versions of it online. The text was written by David Cody, and I encourage folks to check out that piece because it's a really powerful piece, and it is often staged in such a way that by the end of the piece, you actually see the baritone who is singing and the individuals in the orchestra dying as a result of it. So, like, there's also a powerful theatrical moment. The other is a piece by Courtney Bryan, really amazing composer. I went to grad school with her. It was commissioned by The Dream Unfinished. Our friend Un Lee is the leader of that organization. It's called Yet Unheard, and it is dedicated to Sandra Bland. And it's also a really powerful piece, this one for soprano, and it's also widely available online. And I encourage folks to listen and engage with works like theirs. There are other composers, Joel Bentley Thompson, some other people I could think of off the top of my head, who are also writing in the classical idiom and conversant with this kind of thing. But we need more, and we certainly want to hear from everybody out there about what's speaking to them right now, what inspires them, and maybe what they would like to see and hear.
Absolutely. Well, this is going to be an ongoing conversation, probably for the rest of time. But we need to move on with the rest of our show, and we have got a good one today. With all of this happening, may have forgotten that we have part 3 of our Joseph Bolognapalooza going on. So that's spoiler alert, probably might be and this time around, I loved this conversation so much. I'm actually really, really proud of it, and I think it's one of the coolest things that we've done. But we have Professor Julian Ledford on to talk about Joseph Boulogne, his life. He wrote a paper about a lot of people are introduced to Joseph Boulogne's life and work as the Black Mozart, and that's problematic. That moniker just a tad. And so Professor Ledford wrote a whole paper about exactly why that is so problematic. But he also just has such a deep appreciation for Boulogne's life and his work, and is just so passionate about the subject that I left that conversation feeling super inspired and wanting to go write a symphony of my own. So I don't know about y'all. But stay tuned. Professor Julian Ledford is up next, and then after that, Pure Black Joy. So we will be right back after this.
And we're back, and we have a very, very special guest with us this afternoon who will help us continue to think about Joseph Boulogne, his significance, and why he is so much more than the Black Mozart. So our special guest today is Professor Julian Ledford. He is an assistant professor of French and French studies at the University of the South in Tennessee. Dr. Ledford specializes in early modern French and Francophone literature with a particular focus on Joseph Boulogne, the Chevalier de Saint-George, as well as 18th century women writers' contributions to discussions on masculinities. Clearly, we should have him back again in the future. An alumnus of Washington and Lee and Vanderbilt Universities and the Peabody Institute at Johns Hopkins, Dr. Ledford also researches ethnic, racial, and sexual difference in the 1700s, French Baroque opera, and second language teaching and learning. Welcome, Dr. Ledford.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here and excited about the production. I congratulate all of you for this work. This is, it warms my heart to see, that Boulogne's work is not, going back into obscurity, and there's so much energy around this work. So thank you many times for having me, and thank you for your work.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. And thank you for your thanks.
See, so why don't we just jump right in and break down the term, the Black Mozart, and why it's problematic as a moniker for Boulogne. And also maybe as a part of that, you could say a little bit about the actual timeline between Boulogne versus Mozart's musical careers, and sort of how the term Black Mozart erases the full richness of Boulogne's life.
Yeah. So maybe we'll start with the latter question. Mozart and Joseph Boulogne were, prominent at the same time. They knew each other. They were aware of each other's work. In fact, Boulogne is older, or was older than Mozart. And as the story goes, Mozart was down on his luck, and was trying to find his own name and his own path in classical music. And his dad invited him, or told him, to go seek out Joseph Boulogne, go to France. And when you're there, find this man, because he's doing great things, in Paris. And so the introduction to, the world of classical music in Paris would have probably, for Mozart, would have, led him to Joseph Bologne. And so it's interesting for me, when I, first got into this, to see that, well, looking at the term Black Mozart, it would seem as if, Bologne was trying to sort of imitate what Mozart was doing, and that he was the second, the other, the one who, wasn't quite there yet, wasn't quite Mozart, but the Black one. And that's the only way that we could understand him. And that was the beginning of, his introduction to, classical music, and to those who listen to Mozart and who listen to 18th century classical music. That there's Mozart, and then this other one who is maybe not as prominent, but is a Black one. And so I took issue with that, of course. Now, I'll be honest. It is a catchy term, I have to say. We all know. And this is not to take anything away from Mozart, his work stands on its own, and that's fine. But my introduction and what caught my eye was first Mozart, and then the addition of Black, made me, really double down to say, well, who is this person? Why have I never heard of him? And so in one sense, and I hate to say this, but in one sense, it did bring attention to Joseph Bologne, the term Black Mozart. But once that attention is gained, what do we do with that term? Once we've arrived, then we're not paying attention to this man. What do we do with the term Black Mozart? And so in my work, I am trying to sort of erase or remove this terminology, because it's sort of, it doesn't allow us to explore the unique contributions of Saint-George, or Bologne, as we call him, and to really see how he contributed to 18th century French music, especially to symphonic music at the time, right? And I mean, at this point, I can't say that, Mozart borrowed or even, copied some of, Bologne's work. But that's probably a lesser argument. It's something that we have to discuss. I mean, if we separate the two, there's enough that Bologne has done on his own to earn for him his own name and his own space. And so in my discussion, in my work, that's what what I'm trying to encourage listeners of this music, those who study the music, those who perform the music, to not try to recreate or find within Bologne some aspect of Mozart, but to appreciate this man for on his own, and create the terms and the parameters and the objects, philosophical objects with which to treat Joseph Bologne separately.
So I'm curious, when you first learned about Bologna, I think like I mentioned before we started the recording, I was introduced to Bologna as the Black Mozart as well. So was there, a piece of music that you heard, or just reading about his life? I mean, he was so incredible, such an incredible fencer and military leader and statesman. What was it about Boulogne when you first were introduced to him that made you so excited to learn more about him?
Honestly, everything. And the first thing was maybe shame, complete shame. Because, I mean, I am still discovering more about this man. And here it is. I've done my studies, a master's in music, I would say, and also, a doctorate in French studies. And nowhere did I encounter this person. But randomly, after let me be honest. I was told that my area of expertise, was interesting, but perhaps not as there was not much longevity in it. I was looking more so at 17th century music theories. That's pretty. Not many people are really interested in that. So I was encouraged to maybe, broaden my horizon somewhat and try to find my own self, in my work. And so I said, well, here I am, a Black man from Jamaica who's interested in opera, and, early modern, mid-modern, centuries. And I said, there is no one who would fit that category. And so a random search, led me to this term, as you said, Black Mozart. Like, okay, Black Mozart? Is it someone who's maybe born in, some parts of the Caribbean, or who is this person? And when I found out that his mom was an enslaved African, my eyes almost, fell out of my head. I was like, there's no way that there is someone who is a son of an enslaved African who rose to prominence as a classical musician from Guadeloupe right here, and I didn't know about it.
And no, I didn't know about it either. And I've been in classical music for years, so
right.
It's crazy.
I couldn't walk around not knowing about this person. So I, kept reading, and just discovering more about his life. And there's still so much to be, discovered. His friend group, for example, the people who he had in his entourage, as you say, from fencing, from boxing, he was also, just this all-around athlete. But then also, these actresses who seem to just love him, and the rumors that swirled about him, his endowment, and the mysteries about what he was as a sexual creature. Just there's so much to find, so much to unearth, and so it's at once daunting, to say, well, oh my gosh, there's so much that I don't know, and there's so much that probably will never know. There's so much that we've lost to history, lost to time. This man supposedly wrote 200 arias or 200 songs. Where are the songs? Who's going to interpret them? Who's going to transcribe them? So I don't know. I feel a little maybe not overwhelmed, but as if I'm behind, and that we need to actually do what you're doing in Minnesota to actually shed light on this music, and maybe call other researchers and other powerful minds to actually unearth a lot about this man and publish it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I hope people answer that call. I think your energy about it is infectious. I do. And I mean, to what you and Rocky have described, I had similar reactions finding out about Boulogne, and I was just like, what? Like, how did I not know about all these accomplishments and the relatability as well as like a Black person we all know who have had to navigate either white spaces or really classed spaces as well. But I wonder, like, what have other folks' reactions to your work been? Especially, I mean, I think to like Boulogne himself, like learning about his life, but also to you kind of debunking the Black Mozart thing, or, making the argument that maybe that's not the best moniker for him. What have the reactions been?
Fortunately, people have reacted very kindly. I haven't had much pushback. I haven't had many people say, well, my argument is not valid. In fact, the opposite, people have given a lot of praise for my work. They do understand that perhaps once upon a time the term Black Mozart was useful. It did call attention to something and to someone, and maybe in some sort of allyship, if you want to say use that terminology, that Mozart, who did eventually, gain more prominence, somehow, latently look back and said, okay, well, my name can be used to maybe, lift this person out of obscurity. Now, the term obscurity that I've used to, mention to describe Saint-George or Bologne, sorry, that is where I've gotten some pushback. There are persons who believe that Saint-George was never an obscure figure. So here we are saying that we didn't know about, José Bologne. And I, in an article I wrote, I submitted, the, feedback was, well, remove the term obscure. He was not obscure and is not obscure. And so I still don't know how to respond to that. Sure, in his time, if he rose to this prominence in France, yes, he, did, live in, high society, and was friends with aristocrats and the nobility. But the passage of time, has actually buried him under a lot of, obscurity, I would say. He is someone who is, it's just recently, I would say that, different opera houses and different, symphonies are, programming his music frequently and regularly. But I will still argue that, Black Mozart is still more popular than Joseph Bologne. And Joseph Bologne is also, I would say, still an obscure figure. For what he was and what he is today, there's this huge difference between, his prominence in the 18th century and what he is today. And so I would still argue that, there's a lot of work to be done to remove this obscurity from him. And and that starts by calling him Joseph Bologne, the Chevalier de Saint-George, and not Black Mozart. Yeah,
Absolutely.
So that's where, and I'm still debating it. I'm not sure how to argue, that someone is obscure. Do I need to count the many times, the amount of times that his work is programmed? Count, how many people, how many musicians and musicologists and those who are doing their doctoral work, how many times they mention and actually even know basic facts about this man, like the symphony symphony concertante, yeah, this musical genre that he actually pioneered. How often do we use that? How often do we hear that mentioned in these musical circles where people study music and that study the 18th century? How often do we link that to Joseph Bologne? And for these reasons, I think there's much more work to be done to remove him from this obscurity and actually restore to him, if that's a better term, restore to him the prominence that he did have in the 18th century.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Thank you for that. So there is a recurring conversation we've had on the podcast with a number of guests who were, composers or singers, several Black people who have come on and have brought up the fact that very commonly, if there is a work that is being produced either by Black creators or for Black audiences, or even with a primarily Black cast, they frequently feature the suffering of Black people, right? And this is whether they are contemporary or canonical works, right? And part of what is refreshing and very unique about The Anonymous Lover is that it feels not racialized, right? And it's also has the same quality, the slight airy quality like a rom-com, right? So his work, at least this particular piece, isn't overtly political. And I'm curious, from your perspective, does this make it more palatable to audiences in general, to white audiences? Is it like a bit of a relief for Black audiences to be able to go into the space and know that no one is going to be, murdered or brutalized in the next, couple hours?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's a tricky question. Putting it in context, if this opera was performed for the aristocrats, for Madame de Montesson in her private theater, it would have to be something that would, please the people, please the audience, and not something to actually ruffle any feathers, because if you have the privilege of the king, you make sure you do what you need to do to keep that privilege. But for the concert goer today, looking at what opera is supposed to do, and this is another debate, and I don't know if we should go there, but the difference between opera and straight theater, what is sublime versus what is marvelous. In opera we have the things that fly, we have magic, we have these catchy tunes, and dancing dragons and fire breathing things, and it's supposed to sort of enchant the audience in a different way, and I think we're able to, with this music by Saint-George, invite concert goers to actually live just for that, the enchantment of the moment, and see on the stage a world that is just removed from their reality. And in that space, there can be joy, there can be this feeling of whatever deep emotion there is, if it's laughter, plain laughter. And I think in a time like this, if we can just in a very light-hearted way laugh together and have a moment to escape reality, even though we'll still be in masks and, distance and everything. We would have served Saint-George's music, and we've served, opera, well. And so this is not to say that José Bologne was not, politically engaged. He did write a pamphlet during the French Revolution. He was, heavily involved in, different wars, different revolutionary wars all across France. So he was a very engaged citizen, and he said that openly. I'm a citizen of France, very engaged. But, he was able to see within that, this need for, this escape, this lighthearted moment where the pleasure of someone else is what is important. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but if concert goers, especially those who are, people of color, can see, in Saint-George, this lighthearted and happy and, very maybe almost tongue-in-cheek and, naughty personality, that's great, because those are all human emotions, and we are fully part of the human experience. And it's tricky. I don't know. I mean, as a professor here, at the University of the South, I feel as if everything I say has to serve a certain purpose. There has to be this weight to it, and I have to make sure that I use my words very carefully. And if I forget to include, some notion of the atrocities of the past, then I'm not doing things correctly. And it's a heavy load to carry all the time. And I don't think we have to, we shouldn't, if we're fully, if we're humans, we are a part of this, this earth, and we, have human emotions. It's really weird if we're only always, using one set of emotions. And let's talk about too, some of the other medical issues that, are prominent in certain communities. And I wonder, stress and, just sadness and this grief that we carry, does eventually lead to other things that we have to eventually, speak to doctors about. I wonder if this little medicine here that, José Bologne is giving us is not what we need somewhere else, just like, just this légèreté, this lightness.
Yeah. This is a thing I feel like I've been wrestling with for about 12 years now. My first semester of grad school, I had a colleague, or we'll call a a rival, say in class one day.
Oh, snap.
Yes.
It's a cutthroat world. He said all Black art is necessarily political, right? And like that was the thing that just really, really sat with me, because as an artist, I feel like you can exist in a politicized body and still have your own space to create whatever it is that you're creating, like anyone else. But then as an historian, everything that he said, like, I immediately followed it, right? And I know that we also exist in the context that we exist, right? And there's a way that folks are going to read on to what you write, things whether you mean them or not. So I really appreciate your perspectives here, because I think this is it's a really thorny issue anytime we're talking about Black art.
I mean, I was literally talking about this with my therapist not 1 hour ago.
That's so real. Yeah, I appreciate you complicating the answer too. It's like there's what you put out there, there's what you intend, there's the feeling that you have when you're creating a thing, and then especially as Black people or as any racialized person, there's like how it's actually perceived. So
right.
yeah. Speaking of perception, I wonder if you could speak to how Bologna is known in the Francophone world now. And like, does he have a following? How was he remembered, especially in the Black Francophone world, and knowing that could like look different from place to place? Like when we talked to the director of Anonymous Lover, Maria Todaro, she was saying how in France, where she grew up, like they didn't grow up learning about him. Like it wasn't a prominent figure, but I wonder if that's different from place to place. Can you
So I mean, in France, it's just very recently that there's a small plaque, put on a street. I tried to find it on Google Maps. It's a very tiny street, that's named after José Bologne. But in Guadeloupe, though, this is good news. I mean, there are schools named after him. There are different endowments, different scholarships, and there's this festival every year. That is, I think it's held in the US and also in Guadeloupe, calling together lots of artists, different from different parts of the world, and also, showcasing Black artists as well, not just maybe in symphonic works, but also in, vocal music as well. And so in this part of the world, in the US and also in, the French Caribbean territories, there's this new energy around Saint-George. And recently, researchers discovered the identity of his mom. She it's a little sad, I guess. Well, it is sad, just remembering someone through what they left behind. So we were able to find her apartment and to find the little objects she had, her furniture. There was the death notice. She wasn't well off. Clearly, she didn't have a very easy life. She was brought to France by José Bologne's dad, and was, I don't know how to say this, but was given her freedom. A very tricky statement to say, because we know that that's not humanly possible. But she was a free person in France, and did get some inheritance after the death of Joseph's dad, but that wouldn't have been enough for her to live on. But it's not only in his music and programming, different symphonies, but also just this energy is also coming to help us understand his family. His mom, his half sister, his dad. So I'll say that there's this new attention being paid to Saint-George. I'm not sure when in France we'll have the same energy. In France, there's probably still some debate about which angle to take, which Joseph to honor. The citizen who was active in the French Revolution. I don't know whether there's there needs to be a discussion about which angle to choose. All of these, aspects belong to one man, a citizen of France, and I'm not sure if it's a matter of, maybe some communication between the US and France, musicians there, different conservators there, or between Guadeloupe, which is, and I shouldn't probably make that distinction, because Guadeloupe is a territory, is a region of France. But here I am saying that in metropolitan France, there's not this great attention being paid to Saint-George, but in Guadeloupe there is. Is that sufficient? Do we need to have France, metropolitan France, do a big to-do about Saint-George? Or are we okay with Guadeloupe, which is, a region of France, with them leading the charge and probably telling other countries, other spaces to say, this is how you should do it. So, it's another, question. Should there be a museum in France? Should it be in Guadeloupe? Mm-hmm. Do we need museums? Do we need, funding? Do we need, So, it's hard to really say what direction to take. But I'm happy that there is something going on. There's some energy, being put into Saint-George. Mm-hmm.
Well, going back to sort of our earlier question about, Black Mozart versus, having Boulogne stand apart in his own right. When I was first learning about him, I found his life and his story just so exciting, and just so inspiring. As a Black artist today. And so I'm just curious for you, what are some of the lessons that his life and his story, that would be relevant for artists today, or that are relevant for you or inspiring for you?
Yeah, like you, I read, his biography, and I read, different, articles about him, and I am inspired, the idea of triumph is interesting to me, you know, especially in the face of adversity. If you think about the time that he was alive in France, when his presence in the country was so tenuous, he was brought to France with the idea, with the understanding that he'd be there for maybe 3 years to get education that was fit for a young man. And after 3 years, he should have gone back to Guadeloupe. Now, of course, we're in a time when there's not, there really wasn't very, how should I say? It was difficult to maybe keep track of people, not rigorous checking. The spelling of someone's name wasn't always correct. And someone could maybe just change the last name and disappear, Now, because of different wars and stuff, it was difficult for him to go back. But can you imagine navigating, that space in France as someone who is off color, right? Whose status in the country kept changing. Eventually, as a Black man, he could not marry. He could not, he had really, really no status there. But to, use talent and, his art to, maybe sort of overcome those barriers and to still, gain entry into certain circles and, that to me is so inspiring. And within that, he was still able to create beautiful music to not that didn't come from a bitter and broken place. It was still able to blossom in such a very, I don't know, it must have been a toxic environment for him. And so that to me is inspiring, this triumph in the face of adversity. And also just him as this person who was able to write about love, even though his love life must have been maybe not love life, but his he wasn't able to maybe achieve the sort of love that he would have wanted. It is rumored that he did have a love child. Yeah, you've probably read about that. That was left to die. And that he was still the favorite of Marie Antoinette. He was still around these other artists, these other, actresses, and Madame in the court. But yet he was unable to maybe achieve the sort of love that he would have wanted because of the color of his skin. How do you? How do you overcome that? And look, it's something that it makes me sad, but at the same time, this man was extremely resilient, must have been, to not crumble, to not, just give up, and so there's so much more that and I want to discover about him, but just, listening to his music, and you can tell, that he understood the depth of sorrow. He could conjure up that spirit in his music. And I'm not a musicologist, and I probably stepping on some toes that I cannot read in music, depths of sorrow. But I don't know. There's something in the music that can bring me, I don't know, make me feel this depth of emotion on both extremes. This lighthearted, giddy, very triumphant music, but also this the very gut-wrenching sadness, that's there as well. There's so much to hear, so much to experience in this music, in all of it. And there's more music that needs to be found. So we need people, I guess, to crawl into the archives with nimble fingers and to find this music that's been lost.
Absolutely. Well, if any of you all out there want to experience some of his music, unfortunately, Anonymous Lover has closed at Minnesota Opera, but there are still plenty of clips of the show online. You can go see some of the wonderful arias performed by our wonderful cast at mnopera.org. And there's also, you were mentioning the Festival International de Musique Saint-George.
Yes.
And I think because of COVID, unfortunately, it will be happening either later this year or next year, not this spring as it usually does. But go check out their website and you can learn more about that. And we'll put all of that information in the show notes. So Professor Ledford, we are so grateful that you joined us today. Thank you so, so much for being on the show and for imparting all of this wisdom and teaching us even more about Joseph Boulogne and his life.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun for me. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will be right back with Pure Black Joy. Yay! Woohoo! All right, and we are back. Love that conversation. Thank you so much, Professor Ledford, for being with us and sharing all of your insights. So wonderful. Ooh, and that velvety accent. Ooh, it just...
Yes. I love being surrounded by y'all West Indians. I really do.
It was like a warm hug. It was like a warm hug. But if that's not enough Pure Black Joy for you, it's time for the official Pure Black Joy segment. 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4.
Peanut butter jelly, 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 peanut butter jelly. It's peanut butter jelly time, peanut butter jelly time.
Whole wheat,
Multigrain for me.
Oh, remix. All right, and this is the segment of the show where we just talk about some Black things that are making us happy this week. So who wants to go first, Lee?
Yes, I would love to. So earlier in the broadcast, Paige, I think you mentioned monuments, right? And how we are memorializing a moment for ourselves. So I want to share a little bit of Black History Month news from my hometown, Richmond, Virginia.
Okay.
At one point, capital of the Confederacy, currently trying to do something different.
Yay.
So as many of you know, there were these 6 Confederate, quote, hero statues in Richmond. Most appeared on this major thoroughfare called Monument Avenue, which also randomly has a statue to Arthur Ashe, another Richmonder.
It's an interesting street, to say the least. And it's all like it's like all cobblestones. Like you're driving on like cobblestone. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
So with Robert E. Lee's statue coming down last year, the last of those 6 were removed. They've all been placed in other places. And as a part of the Black History Month acknowledgement this year, the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts is showcasing a lot about the history of the town, and there's been a lot that's been organized around it. And there's one particular piece I'd love to draw folks' attention to. There's a project called Mending Walls. It's a public art project by Hamilton Glass, and it's acknowledging that with these Confederate statues coming down, instead what is going up are all of these murals, many of which are directly celebrating Black Lives Matter, but it's sort of reframing what is memorialized in Richmond, how people are talking about the history, and then centering the experiences of Black people in Richmond, which is really important because the city of Richmond for quite some time has been predominantly Black, right? Richmond hasn't been an all white or even mostly white town for decades and decades. So one, I'm super excited that there's this shift happening, that people are thinking about public spaces to have a very different kind of a conversation than the one was happening in the city when I was growing up. And on February 24th, there's going to be a speaker series that will begin. The first speaker is going to be Lawrence Douglas Wilder, who many of you will remember as the first Black man to be elected governor. He's also the first elected mayor of Richmond. Richmond just didn't have elected mayors until like 2005.
What
They
did
were
they-
appointed.
Yeah.
Oh, by
Oh.
who?
Right. Child, I don't even know. It's always a curiosity of like sort of how the system was set up. But Governor Wilder is also a family friend, and he is living Black history. He's now in his 90s. I encourage people to go hear him speak. He's a fantastic speaker, right from Richmond, and will speak pointedly and openly about the challenges that we have faced in the city, and really how we are trying to be different now in 2022. So I'm super excited about that. I wish things would shake out in such a way that I could go home to see it, but I'm just proud of my hometown for taking that work on, because I know it's not easy in a city where that history is so baked into so many things. So
Nice. I just have to say, Richmond is one of my favorite places in the world. It really
Aw.
is. I love Richmond so much. Every time I go there, I have such a good time. Such a good food city.
good food. Yeah.
Good
Okay.
food. And cheap.
Yeah, it
And
really is.
cheap, good food. Like, and you can just walk around, like, especially like, like an area like the Fan or
Mhm.
something, like it's just,
Mhm.
the architecture is just so beautiful. Everywhere there's a veranda, there's a porch. I love a porch,
Yeah.
honey.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
just such a beautiful city. Just the parks, the trees, I can't say enough good things about Richmond. So
Aw.
shout out to Rachel Pryor and Maureen Brooks.
I need to visit then.
Yeah, you
Yes,
do.
I've never
You
been
do.
to Richmond.
Go to Black Sheep, get a sandwich.
Yeah, definitely go to Black Sheep. Yeah.
Okay.
Ipanema, good vegan food. Is that place still open? I wonder.
I'm not sure actually. The pandemic was
Yeah,
it hurt the restaurant
it
scene
did.
really
It
bad
really
there.
did.
Yeah.
That place with the biscuits. Oh, what is that?
That
place
could be
called?
literally anywhere.
No, that's true. That's true.
Don't say in
That's
the
true.
South.
No, but they have anyway. They have biscuit sandwiches and like amazing. The Cuban place, Cuba Libre, I think it's called.
Mhm.
Anyway, I could talk
Mhm.
about food in Richmond for like the same way I could talk about food in Philly.
Oh, I love Philadelphia. It's one of my favorite cities.
So
We are
clearly, I just need to do an East Coast like foodie tour.
yes.
Yeah.
I think I just want to go from like Philly to like Virginia, Baltimore,
Mhm,
absolute
definitely
Baltimore,
Baltimore.
Philly, Baltimore, Virginia. Okay.
'Cause,
never
like,
mind.
And swing by DC too. I mean, we can't neglect DC.
Okay, DC is my hometown and I love it to death, but
I do
like
too.
the food scene, when you compare it to some other places nearby,
I feel like
it's
a lot of the
great.
good food about DC comes from outside of DC.
That's
do-
probably true.
I mean, please
Yeah.
go and patronize DC businesses. Jose Andres is out here killing it, doing beautiful work, and there are all sorts of beautiful, incredible restaurants in the city. I don't mean to besmirch the DC restaurant scene. I'm just saying, if you're gonna, spend some money to go on a trip to eat things, maybe Philly or Richmond or Baltimore. That's all I'm saying. Don't hate me, DC. I'm sorry. I love you. Mumbo sauce is the truth.
Love it.
Go get you a
mumbo
half-
sauce.
Go get you a half
Yes.
smoke. Absolutely.
I really do miss the 3-piece wings with fried rice and mumbo sauce all over.
That sounds really
Absolutely.
good.
I really do.
Absolutely. That is
Field trip.
Right. See, let's get this Patreon started. We need a bigger budget, clearly.
Well, weren't you talking about like a food festival like a couple of months ago? Wasn't that your Pure Black Joy like a long time ago? There was like a Midwest
it was like Black Restaurant Week.
Yes.
When is that?
When is that?
Ooh, I don't know.
Let's start a Patreon and go.
I feel like that was in summer, maybe.
Would you all pay to hear us eat food?
Please say yes.
Say yes. Just say yes. But speaking of, I don't know what I'm speaking of. Paige, do you have a Pure Black Joy? Now I'm thinking about food. Now I want to go to Monk's in Philadelphia.
Blackness and goodness.
That's all I'm thinking about now. Now I'm thinking about how I haven't eaten anything. I made
crab cakes.
I made a pot of red beans last weekend. The leftovers are waiting for me in the fridge. Okay, enough about food.
You might make none for us? Wow. Okay. Yeah, anyway.
COVID, it's not safe. It's not safe.
Anyway, my Pure Black Joy is actually, I think technically this is a repeat. But once again, if I said it before, I'm gonna say it again. I'm just talking about Alana Morris Van Tassel, my good friend, dancer, choreographer, embodied researcher, and her piece Black Light, which is an ongoing dance research. I saw the performance this past weekend at the Kohl's Center. Let's see. Oh, we're recording this February 9th. So that would have been, a while ago for some of y'all. But this is an ongoing research. So there will be other points to see other iterations of Black Light. The performance was just fantastic. So Alana's work, Black Light, is very much of a personal nature, about her personal journey of empowerment, finding herself as a Black woman, as rediscovering her spiritual side, getting in touch with the darkness that's in all of us as well, defining Blackness for yourself, defining your sexuality for yourself, just kind of that inner awakening and journey that happens, and the ancestors and spirit guides as well that have been along with her in that journey. And it was just so beautiful to watch. And to repeat what an audience member said during the post-show Q&A, she just said it was so refreshing to see a dancer with something to say, or to see a performance that where a dancer was empowered to have something to say, to do deep research and share it. I was honored to be the moderator for the post-show talkback.
Hey.
Yeah, and that was just fantastic. It was, she's brought together, I think also what's unique about this project is bringing together a lot of collaborators who are from different types of Black movement disciplines. So there is Janan St-Juste, who we've been talking about, who choreographed Anonymous Lover. She's also a part of Alana's piece in working on the Haitian movement and bringing part of her company, her mother, Madame Fofo, as well, and live drummers who are not only drummers, but just deeply rooted in Haitian spiritual tradition as well. Bringing my friend Andrea Potter, who is an Afro-Cuban dancer and danced professionally for years in New York and has deep knowledge of that. Another friend who, Imagine Joy, who just incorporates sensuality and a ballroom movement as well, because he's a wonderful Black queer dancer. Gabby Abrams as well, who brought so many disciplines. It's a fantastic to see also what happens when we resource Black artists and support Black artists who are who are bringing this kind of thing together. And it was a joy to behold. I highly encourage people to check out her work. this performance was actually, it was digital as well. So I hope future ones will be, and if future ones are, I'll make sure I mention them on the show, because y'all can watch wherever you're at and enjoy it. So just shout out to Alana, shout out to all of her collaborators. Y'all did a fantastic job. Yeah, and I hope we get to see more magic like that in the Twin Cities on our stages.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Yay.
So Alana and Gabby and Andrea and everybody else involved. That sounds awesome.
And you, Paige. No, that's awesome. That's super awesome.
Yeah. That's it for me.
Well, mine's going to be a repeat too. I think this was my Pure Black try. I think it was episode 2, but now here we are almost a year later. And, just want to give them even more shine. Ostensibly, we have more listeners.
I hope so.
But with everything going on, all of the insanity and craziness in the world, I have really just made it even more, it's just even more important to me to just have a mindfulness practice and exercise practice where I'm just sort of taking this energy that's in my body and moving it around so it doesn't sort of get stifled and gross and toxic and moldy and musty. So last week I set the goal for myself to at least work out for half an hour every single day last week. That was my goal. And I met and exceeded that goal 6 days out of 7 last week.
Yes.
So I'm very proud of myself.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It was not easy, especially given the amount of meetings that are on my calendar in any given day. But two of the reasons why it was so easy was thanks to my YouTube trainer, Kira Lachey.
Yes.
Move Fitness on YouTube. She has all sorts of videos where, especially like if you're in like a small space where you don't want to go outside because it's winter, or maybe it's super hot where you are and you want to be inside in the air conditioning. Like, she's got a series of really great videos that you can just move the couch back and do whatever, kickboxing, or just walking in place and doing some aerobics, or if you have a pair of dumbbells, lifting, but also incorporating dance, and she's got 90s hip hop videos, and twerk for better abs, and dance hall, your way to easy booty, no more flabby arms and things like that. So if that's your ministry, I highly recommend it. It's just super fun, and she's there with her girl, Brina Kay, and they're just having the best time and just making what for me for such a long time just was such a chore, actually fun and super Black, and the music is always really good, and I feel like she's just such a calm, non-judgmental presence. And then when she needs to push you, she will push you. Go. But it's fun. It's not in a way that feels some scary man, yelling at you, some sort of drill sergeant. But also another reason why it felt really easy for me is because I look cute while I'm doing it, thanks to my MCE creation shorts and undies and things. I now have the entire line. Oh, forgot. I have it in every color. I have become addicted. But for anyone who is in the market for some cute workout clothes, MC Creations is a Black and queer owned business out of Alabama. And I have never had a pair of shorts that makes me look so cute and makes me feel so confident. They're not paying me to say this. I would love some free whatever, Michael, if you're out there listening. But go to mcecreations.com and check out their stuff because it's so cute and it just will make you comfortable. It's cute and comfortable. So
it must be because it's 2 degrees outside and you are really promoting shorts on here. So
I
it must be
am.
Amazing.
I am.
They should make you official spokesperson or influencer.
And they
of some
like
type.
now they have like the workout shorts, and they have like terry cloth shorts, like lounge shorts, and I'm just like, you are just trying to kill me and my bank account. It's so mean. Stop putting out cute things. But so that's my pure black joy. So go check all of those things out. All of the links to all of those things will be in the show notes. And I think that's going to do it for us this week. Thank you so much to Professor Julian Ledford for joining us. And thank you to all of you. And I just want to put it out there again, our initial conversation about just sort of the state of the world and, what you want or expect or need from arts organizations like ours. Please let us know. We want to hear from you. We want to even perhaps read your letters on the air. The score@mnopera.org is our email. So please, we want to hear from you. And other than that, as usual, rate, review, 5 stars on Apple
5.
Podcasts. You heard him. You heard him. We're not playing. 5 stars, please. Some words, maybe, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and tell all your little friends about us. Next episode, we're going to be joined by the big boss here at Minnesota Opera for next time it's going to be our 1-year anniversary.
It sure
One
is.
year of doing this. So wild. So we're going to be joined by Minnesota Opera's president and general director, Mr. Ryan Taylor, as well as Nina Yoshida Nelson, who is an amazing opera singer and the founder of the Asian Opera Alliance. So she's going to tell us all about her work and her organization's work. And it's going to be a really great show. So we hope you all tune in. But other than that, any words of wisdom? How about this? Stay safe, take care of yourself, do whatever you need to do to stay in a headspace where you can function and not scream every 30 seconds. How about that?
Yeah, in the words of Marshawn Lynch, take care of your mental.
There you go. Take care of your mental.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's probably going to be the episode title. Take care of your mental. All right, that's it. We will see you in 2 weeks, and be good. Love you.
Bye, everybody.